G'day VanFam, it's Brett here from Sveto's Trippin', and in this video we're going to take a look at internet on the road. We're full-time travellers, but we also do our school and work online, so that means we need to have the best possible internet solution out there. We've been on the road now for 2 years, and in that time there's been so many developments in remote internet options, and it's actually now possible to get high-speed internet just about anywhere in Australia. And if you haven't already guessed, I'm talking about Starlink. But while Starlink is a complete game changer for people like us that work online and travel, it's not without some significant disadvantages, and that means that we can't rely on it 100% of the time. In this video, we'll go over everything that we've used for internet on the road. We'll let you know the ins and outs, the pros and cons, basically everything that you need to know about them. So this video will be perfect for you if you're trying to figure out how you're going to be managing internet on the road. Hotspotting. Despite having a lot of different tools that we use for internet on the road, we still actually use our phones quite regularly. I'm just going to leave this here while we talk about it. If you aren't reliant on the internet for work or school, if you don't stream a lot of content, and you're happy to go without internet at times, then the solution of simply hotspotting internet from your phone is the easiest and simplest way to get internet on the road. There are, however, a few negatives to hotspotting internet from your phone that you should be aware of. Phone data can be expensive. Phones are also reliant on the mobile network, so if you don't have any signal, you're not going to have any internet. Lastly, caravans act a bit like a Faraday cage. That is, they stop the signal from getting into your can. Did I just say can? I suppose you could think of it like a can. Basically, inside your caravan, you're going to be getting a reduced signal. Mobile repeater. We bought a Telstra Go before we left to travel Australia. At the time, we thought this would help improve our internet signal, but I can tell you now that if you're looking to improve your internet signal, these are not what you're looking for. In fact, making this video has reminded me that I really need to get rid of this. But a Telstra Go could serve a purpose if you're only planning to be hotspotting from your mobile phone. They work by amplifying the signal coming from the network tower. You place a donor antenna outside the caravan, a server antenna inside the caravan, and then the device amplifies the phone signal and repeats it through this server antenna. This will basically counteract the Faraday cage effect of your caravan. A Telstra Go device is basically supposed to help you make phone calls. They'll take a half a bar of signal and they'll turn it into 1 to 2 bars. And this can help you make a signal, but as for internet data, it doesn't make much of an improvement. In our experience, it would give us a 1 to 2 megabit per second speed increase. It's not nothing, but it's not a lot compared to the other options out there. Mobile router and MIMO directional antenna. The next step up from hotspotting from your mobile phone is a dedicated mobile router and a dedicated mobile data plan. We're using a Nighthawk M3. This has been superseded by quite a few new versions now, but this one's doing the job for us. There are a ton of different mobile routers out there on the market. They're all basically going to be doing the same thing, though I would make sure you pick one that will allow you to connect an external MIMO antenna. In your mobile router, you're going to be installing a SIM card that's on a dedicated broadband data plan. The router itself has an antenna built into it, and it simply picks up the phone signal and then outputs that as a Wi-Fi signal that all of your devices can now connect to. You could run with the mobile router alone, with the advantage being that data plans are a lot cheaper. However, the mobile router is still going to be suffering from that Faraday cage effect inside your caravan, as well as only having a small and simple antenna installed in it. And this is why I would recommend also purchasing an MIMO antenna. This is an MIMO antenna. MIMO stands for multi-input, multi-output. Basically, in layman's terms, these devices drastically improve your signal through multi-antenna technologies. And in layman's terms, that's basically as much as I know about them, but what I also know is they work really well. The amount of signal that your mobile router will receive will be drastically improved by combining it with an MIMO antenna. We place our antenna on an extendable pole outside our caravan. This now means our router is receiving its signal with a much better antenna that's outside the van and then bringing that signal back into the van. So there is no more Faraday cage effect preventing us from getting good signal inside our caravan. But not only that, the MIMO antennas are far better at receiving data signals than the antennas that are built into your mobile routers, and placing them high up into the air improve their ability to find the signal even further. They are called directional antennas because they need to be pointed at the nearest mobile tower. There are apps out there that can help you figure out where those towers are, though it's usually simple enough to just point it at the nearest town. With our mobile router and MIMO antenna setup, we've been able to get speeds of 30 megabits per second in places where you can't even make a phone call. This setup will drastically increase your ability to get internet on the road. However, it is still reliant on the mobile phone network, and there are plenty of places in Australia where there simply isn't any coverage. Speaking of mobile networks, let's take a quick look at the mobile network options that are available. Telstra Vs Optus. In Australia, you've got the choice between 3 different phone networks. There's Telstra, Optus and Vodafone. Everybody knows that Telstra does provide more coverage, but in saying that, there are plenty of times out there where the Optus or Vodafone networks are the only ones that will be providing coverage. However, that's going to be a lot less common than when it's only Telstra providing coverage. But something that we've noticed whilst travelling Australia is that you're often visiting small rural towns during their peak tourist season. This means there are a lot more travellers in the area than usual, and generally speaking, travellers will be on the Telstra network because they know that it provides more coverage. But the problem is, so many travellers being in an area on the same network tends to saturate the tower. So during peak times we see absolutely awful speeds even when we're using our MIMO antenna and mobile router setup. There simply is too much congestion on the mobile phone network. Someone on an Optus or Vodafone network will have perfectly fine and workable internet speeds. This is just something for you to keep in mind when you're making a decision on what network to go with. Telstra definitely provides us with more coverage, and now that we've got Starlink, we do have a way to get through times of congestion. Starlink. We've now had Starlink for 3 months, and for people like us, it really is a complete game changer. There are vast stretches of places in Australia where there simply isn't any mobile phone network coverage, and staying in places like that wasn't possible for us. But now with Starlink, staying in places like this is actually an option. Although, as I'm going to discuss, there are some cons to Starlink, and that means that we can't rely on Starlink to be our only internet service provider. There are 2 parts to Starlink. Firstly, you've got the modem. We store this in our tech cupboard. And secondly, you've got Dishy. I'll just have to step back a little bit to fit that in the screen. So this is Dishy. We've modified our MIMO directional antenna pole so that we can put this on that pole. This gets it up off the ground, helps it get up over trees, and more importantly, prevents it from getting run over or damaged by the kids. Starlink is satellite internet, and Starlink Dishy needs to have line of sight access to the sky. And that is the biggest issue with the whole Starlink setup and why we can't rely on the system 100% of the time. Dishy needs line of sight access to the sky at an angle of about 100 degrees. I'll pop a little diagram up here and kind of demonstrate what that looks like. But it also needs that line of sight access in a specific direction, which at the moment is to the south. And this is why we sometimes run into problems where the Starlink internet won't work. Often we'll be camping in places where there'll be trees or buildings that are blocking that line of sight, and when that happens, the internet provided by Starlink doesn't perform properly. This is a particular problem if you're staying in caravan parks, because you often don't get a choice in where you park. But it's also a common problem when we're staying in national parks where you have to book sites unseen. And also national parks tend to have a lot more trees around as well. Based on our experience, I would estimate that around 30% of our camps, Starlink's going to be receiving some obstructions, which is going to be causing dropouts for us. And I would estimate that maybe 5 to 10% of our camps, Starlink's going to be completely obstructed and won't work at all. And this is why we can't rely on Starlink 100% of the time, and why we need to maintain some of our other internet service options. The other negative to Starlink is that it uses a lot of power. The Starlink that we've ordered runs solely on 240 volts, which means we need to have our inverter on in order to run the Starlink, and we find that Starlink and the inverter together uses around 4 amp hours per hour. We've got a pretty humble power setup, so for us, using Starlink all day for work and school means that we often don't regenerate 100% of our power, which means we're now in a slight power deficit. And that's another reason why we might still just run our wireless modem and antenna setup if we're in a network covered area. Lastly, Starlink is very expensive. For the mobile plan that we have, it's $174 a month. We were able to pick up our hardware while it was on special for $450, but the recommended retail price for it is $1,000. What do we use? As I've been alluding to in this video, we can't rely on Starlink 100% of its time. It's got a few negatives that mean that it can't provide us with internet everywhere that we camp. and that's why we still maintain our wireless modem and MIMO antenna, but on top of that, sometimes we simply hotspot from our mobile phone. We'll use everything that we've talked about in this video, excluding the Selfie Go, which really needs to go. We've also done something pretty tricky with our data plan. We're with Telstra and they've allowed us to do what they call a shared data plan. So we've reduced our broadband data plan from $85 a month and 400 gigs right down to the absolute minimum of $5 a month, and I think it might be something like 5 gig. But what we have done is joined them all together with our phone plans and created a shared data plan. So our phone plans have 40 gigabytes each, giving us a total of 85 gigabytes that we can use across all three of our plans. And that's what's working for us. I hope this video has been informative and helpful. If you've got something out of the video, please do us a favor and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps us out. We also put out a weekly vlog where we share our adventures. You might like to take a look at our channel and check out some of our videos, and maybe subscribe and follow us along on our adventures. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.